Hi and welcome. My name is Mark Risby. I'm the CTO here at Boxer Systems, and thank you for joining us today. So welcome. This is a Broadcast for Enterprise event. This is the first one of these we've run. I do apologise for the small delay, a little bit of finger trouble our end, but we're there now. Thanks for so many of you joining. I can see there's quite a few people on the stream, so we really appreciate your time. Firstly, cheers. I hope you've got a drink with you. You received a goodie bag and package from us, and thank you to our friends at NewTek for helping sponsor that. So we hope you have one on us, and we'll be having one in a bit as soon as we're finished. Questions. This is a small group of people. We're using the Vimeo platform, as you've seen. There's Q&A available there. There's a button if you want to ask a question. You can ask it anonymously. We'll try and do what we can to answer everything during this session. But really the point of this is that we're really happy to do this again. Really this is to give people a top line understanding of what's going on. And we appreciate many of you are going to be in different positions. Some of you are going to be very knowledgeable about IP, some not. We also realise it's difficult to get everyone together to actually watch an event. So here, Liam and I are both happy to come and do this event for you directly. We can look at your own specific requirements and your customer needs, or we can just take you through the whole thing exactly the same again, just for your team. So please talk to your account managers later on and we'll make that happen. So, what are we here to talk about really? Well, I've been doing a lot of talking over the last few years on one major topic really, and that topic's been disruption. We've been talking a lot about how technology has changed. We've been talking about cloud, we've been talking about SaaS, we've been talking about IP video. And all these things have been about, how these things are massive changes to our industry. But really, it's been nothing compared to the wrecking ball that is COVID-19. What we've seen over the past 6 months, we could never have predicted. We have had conversations with people that said never, and now they're very interested. We've had people trying things out that, essentially we never ever saw coming. The rate of transformation coming that's been driven by this, this terrible thing has been amazing. And why is that? Well, so many things have changed. Here I've just put a few things up that came from my camera roll. Conferences, trade shows, sales kickoffs. Just look at all these people. These type of events cannot run. It's just not possible to do them any longer. Also other things like training, teaching, learning. How do we do that? We're seeing universities struggle. How do you move online? How do you do things differently? Demos, demonstrations. We always go on site to do POCs. We've spent a long time doing that. We work with the customers, we work with the products. We can't get access to most people's buildings now. So that's gone. In a nutshell, we're not in Kansas anymore. So what do we do about it? Well, the obvious choice was to move online. Most people straight away took what they were doing, presentations, PowerPoints, whatever, meetings, and moved it over to Zoom. And if any of you have been tracking Zoom's monetization and Zoom's share price lately, it's gone insane. But it's not the answer to everything. We've certainly seen a new term come up. We've heard this term grid blindness. I've heard zoomed out as well, where people are just not able to concentrate on the traditional presentations that they're being given and what they're seeing. I actually typed into a search engine when I was looking for some graphics for this presentation, the words COVID and boring. And the first thing that came up was somebody looking at a PowerPoint presentation online at home. So, I think this has entered, the general world now. And what's the problem? Well, people are generally at home. They're not in an office now. We're seeing, massively diverse workforces. So what does that mean? It means there are distractions. There's washing up to do. There's the laundry to do. There's children. There's the lawn to mow. There's grass growing. There's anything that people can get distracted with. It takes them away from looking at your message, whether they're customers or whether they're your staff. So what's the answer? How do we get to the next level? Well, we come up with this radical idea. It's called television. People like television. Video, we know, is a very effective communications tool, but we have to change the way we do things in the corporate world to match what we see in the in the entertainment world. The first thing, live television. There's no, surprise that live television is the most watched thing. People outside of sport will watch The X Factor, Britain's Got Talent, the news. People engage with live content. They want to feel like they're there. They want to feel like they're part of it in real time. We've been doing this for a long time in corporate world with all hands events, town hall events, that kind of thing. How do we recreate that in an online world? Likewise though, we still need on demand. On demand, we are a Netflix culture now. We want to see things when we want to see things. We've got a geographically diverse workforce, as I've said. So we have people in different time zones. How do we make that work? How do we give people the chance to be flexible and look at the media when they can look at the media? So we need to do both of these things with anything that we're doing. Take content from anywhere. In the broadcast world, we've typically been very limited. We've given people the right camera in the right place. It's been very rigid. In the sort of new world, we want to be able to give people anything. We want to be able to use content from anywhere. That could be a mobile phone, it could be a Teams call, it could be a Skype call, it could be somebody calling in from their private island in the Virgin Islands, the CEO, or it could be somebody down the road using an iPhone. Also, it could still be a full-on studio. We want to give people the flexibility to use what they can use. We also want to use the spaces we have. We have these great conference facilities in a lot of buildings that are just underutilized right now. And I don't think we're going to see people going back to physical offices in the same way and in the same time. So how do we use those spaces? We can very easily find small studios and create small studios out of those spaces. We've got everything in the right place. We can do some amazing things with very little and make it extremely flexible. We want whatever we do to be branded. We want people to work within the environment that we've created, whether it's our website, our corporate look and feel. We want to give people an experience in an app, perhaps, that feels like they're using our app, the company app. We want to make it branded and keep people, within that family. Another requirement in what we're doing, it has to be secure. We've got used to these ideas, perhaps these sales conferences where we may have 200 or 300 of our salespeople in a hotel ballroom looking at a presentation while we tell them what's coming up for the next year. That's really easy to do. It's a physical security thing. How do we recreate that in an online platform and in a digital world? We still have to have security. It's absolutely important. And we need our systems to be redundant. If we're sending this stuff out over the public internet, we want to make sure we've got backup streams and diverse connections to make sure that our message is getting out. It has to be as good as being in front of the person. And analytics, we want to know what's going on. We want to see how many people are there. We want to see what they're watching, how long they're watching for. We want them to engage. We want them to be involved in every level as much as we can, even though they're remote. How do we do that? How do we make that work? I'll come back to the one slide that probably means more than anything else. We're not in Kansas anymore. We really are in a brave new world. And we are trying things that have never been tried before because people are open. Everything is changed. Everything is on the table. So in short, we need better tools to create compelling content. We know how to do it. We've been doing it in television for years. We need to see how we transition that into the corporate and the enterprise space. We need flexible infrastructure. We want to be able to move things from conference rooms and conference facilities into becoming mini studios and flexible spaces to meet the needs of communication today. And whatever we do has to be scalable, has to be dependable, and it has to be secure. Our distribution has got to be right so we can reach as many people in the best way possible. So I'm here from Boxer really. I've brought together a couple of our partners to talk about some ways of doing these things. Boxer, we've been around for, well, just about 30 years now. And we've typically come from the broadcast and post-production space, but we're moving more and more now into working in enterprise and corporate. Most of the time, we're not working directly. We're working with SIs, specialist SIs in this industry, and consultants to help deliver specialist sections of systems, working as sometimes subcontractors to the prime. We're very used to working together in that way. We're looking at delivering very specific solutions and taking our, say, 30 years worth of experience in bringing digital video together and helping work collaboratively with other companies. So to kick that off, I'd like to introduce Liam Hayter from Newtek, who's going to take us through some of their solutions involving NDI and the Tricaster products.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks for the introduction there and a bit of background to what we're talking about today. So first up, I'd just like to sort of have a little look and talk a bit more about NewTek for those of you that don't already know us. NewTek's single mission has always been to give as many storytellers as possible a voice through video, and to achieve that we use a high level of innovation to enable that, to ensure that as many people as possible can tell their story and deliver their message, whatever the situation. From our standpoint, since we were founded in 1984, we've always believed that the future of video production is always going to be software defined, utilising computers, software and networks now in later recent years as we all start moving towards IP infrastructure as well. You'll find NewTek systems used at some of the largest and also the smallest events in the world as well. So anything from arenas and esports arenas through to TV studios, smaller productions, education, corporate environments, and anywhere in between, because our technology is completely scalable to meet all of those challenges. Some example vendors that are already working with us and using our NDI protocol, which we're about to cover, are vendors such as NEC, Panasonic, Sony, Dataton, Watchout, Disguise, BirdDog, Maduel, Telestream, and many, many more from across the broadcast and from the AV and software industries as well. Most recently, Microsoft have actually now started embedding our IP protocol into not only Skype for desktop, but also Teams, which rapidly increases the actual usable ownership out there of the NDI protocol. But what is NDI? I mean, this is the core of what we do and what we're here to talk about moving content across networks. NDI stands for Network Device Interface, and it's a proprietary protocol that we developed back in 2015 and have evolved over time. In fact, the actual precursors to NDI actually go way back to about 2004, when customers wanted to start bringing in content and PowerPoints directly off laptops without the need for additional computer or hardware devices to bring that in. So even back then, we started moving content across the network, and you could argue we've been playing around with network and video for the longest in delivering rich media experiences. NDI is royalty-free. It's an openly accessible SDK which you can download from www.ndi.tv. We'll go into a bit more detail about how all of this works, but if you want to get into the deeper detail or even start playing around with our development tools yourself, you can get those from the NDI.tv website with additional information as well. So some goals around what we set out to achieve with NDI are as follows. We wanted to make sure that it could work on existing gigabit Ethernet networks. Gigabit Ethernet is the lowest common denominator in terms of IP. Almost every computer device and every network now has it. The majority of offices and buildings have gigabit Ethernet as that baseline transport. So we need to make sure it could work with that, but also ensure that NDI could work with higher bandwidth networks as they become increasingly available. We're already seeing 10 gig now become widely adopted, but also now 100 gig, 120 gig and beyond. And when you actually move NDI onto those high bandwidth networks, we simply can deliver more streams and more throughput to actually enable you to do more rather than requiring you to have to move to those higher end networks straight away. NDI has been designed to be as easy to set up and configure as possible with automatic discovery, and make sure it's as easy as possible for end users to utilize in terms of human naming conventions. And we'll cover that in more detail in just a moment. We also want to make sure that NDI is completely interoperable. We're not in the business of leaving people behind as we move across generations, but also we've seen the transition from HD to 4K. Already people are talking about 8 and 16K. So we want to make sure that the equipment that you invest in that uses NDI now will work with equipment that uses NDI in the future as well. NDI has been designed to be as flexible as possible and also ensure that it can work over long distances. We can move NDI over things such as VPN, for example, or long distance networks. We have customers that can move NDI between different cities and towns. We've even got people trying it intercontinentally. But NDI, because it's software based, has also been designed so it could be deployed in cloud deployments into the future as well, or hybrid models where we're using local sources and also remote sources as well. Another aspect of NDI was to use commercial off-the-shelf IT and hardware wherever possible. We want to make sure that we're using standard computers, mobile devices, as well as dedicated devices as well. So you can use almost any network switch within reason. We always recommend an enterprise class switch as the baseline minimum, but the idea is it's as flexible as possible to work with the infrastructure that you've got in a majority of cases. We also wanted to make sure that the ecosystem of products that we're building is also as wide as possible and not just NewTek product. So we actually have, through that royalty-free SDK, the ability for anybody to develop software, and then vendors that want to integrate NDI into hardware can do that on a licensing agreement as well. With NDI, because we're on an IP fabric, one of the key benefits to actually working with that type of environment is that everything is bidirectional. Every cable can carry multiple feeds, both in and out across the network, drastically reducing the cable account and also the cost of actually installing infrastructure as well. In fact, every transmitter is also a receiver, so we can send that data back and forth. Devices can encode and decode at the same time, again, reducing the complexity of what you need to lay out. But why NDI for the AV space? Well, we feel that actually NDI, out of all the current IP protocols at the moment, is the only one that can cater for both traditional broadcast production and video creation, as well as the AV markets as well, rather than focusing on either camp, as we'll find with some of the other protocols. So we can actually ensure that you can combine all these different environments together on that one single fabric for all of your video and IP fabric. At the moment, you'll look out there, you'll see that there are at least 2 varieties of NDI that are currently working together. These are going across 3 different deployment types. We have NDI where it originally started, which you'll find in computers, so you'll find it in software, our Tricaster production systems, I/O modules that you put on the network there, and that can operate on both Windows and Mac platforms, and also starting to see more emergence within Linux as well. Then we launched something called NDI HX, which was a lower bandwidth version of NDI optimized for utilizing in existing encoders, so things such as PTZ cameras and the like. So you'll see cameras from ourselves, Sony, Panasonic, utilizing the NDI HX version of the protocol, and we'll explain that in more detail in a moment. But we also then have things like NDI embedded, so we can embed NDI within a hardware chip, use that with little mini converters like this HDMI adapter that we're using here today. Mark's got an SDI version there as well, but also in more modern PTZ cameras as well. So we're starting to see cameras from Panasonic and Bird Dog with high bandwidth NDI embedded. This isn't to say that NDI HX is lesser than NDI, it's just a different means with less data, and again, it's all about picking the right tool for the job. And one of those example uses of NDI HX is that we can actually deploy onto mobile devices. So things like the Apple iPhone or iPad can now actually be turned into a usable camera, which you can utilize on your network. And I'm just going to switch over to one of our software tools very quickly. This is called the NDI Studio Monitor, which you can download from ndi.tv. We also have some scan converter applications, so I can turn my laptop feed into another source. And Mark's going to explain a little bit more using his phone now, just to show you what else we're using here today.
Thank you. So yeah, just a quick example behind the scenes here, just using the camera. It's great having the phone camera. It gives you 4K quality, you know, in your pocket. And I can show you some of the things we're using. Here's some Bird Dog cameras. Here we're using the new NewTek 4K camera, and there's the NewTek Lucky Duck. We're using a combination of Bird Dog converters and NewTek converters. So this is great, you know, just to be able to use this to be able to show somebody what's going on in a demonstration in a very quick and easy way. There's nothing like it, and it's a free application. So yeah, very powerful, amazing little product.
And just like everything with NDI, you know, we can actually look that up on the network there. So in this pull down list here, you can see all the sources that we're utilizing today in the Studio Monitor application, and they're just up there. So this is that name-based discovery that I was mentioning earlier on. And I think it's a good opportunity, in just a moment, for us to actually unpack how that's actually operating for your users at an end standpoint there. So I'm just going to minimize that for a minute, and let's just go move across quickly. One last thing on mobile devices, and something that's been often asked for us at trade shows such as ISE, is actually going to mobile capture as well. So as well as being able to utilize mobile camera using NDI HX on the iPad or the iPhone devices, all the way up to 4K, we can also now do immediate screen capture from those devices, so you can gather content from any iOS application that might be running on your phone or tablet. So let's have a look at how this actual operation of discovery and how it actually behaves on the network, and what makes NDI so different compared to other IP protocols. Here is a gigabit network. I'm not going to show you the actual full illustration of how the network switches will connect, because there's so many different models of deployment, from VLAN or star and leaf type methodologies, depending on the size of the project you're going to build. But from a software standpoint, we treat everything as one single subnet. Within that subnet, we can have up to 255 devices, and each of those devices can be delivering multiple streams and receiving multiple streams. So we'll populate this network. Let's put an I/O module on the device. This is one of our 1U rack mount devices, and we'll give you 8 SDI in or out, or both, from the one unit on the network. So this allows you to break into existing infrastructure that you'll already have out there. At the other end of the network, I'm going to put one of our Tricaster production systems where you can basically do all the creative work and generate your content as well. In fact, we can populate this network with as many sources as we want. While a single subnet is tied to 255 individual devices with multiple channels, you can actually bridge subnets together. Our largest site at the moment in Sweden is actually totaling 750 simultaneous sources on their network right now. All of those devices, when they're on that network, don't generate any heavy traffic. There is no data moving across the network, except for one small thing. Every single device will broadcast an MDNS packet across the network. Within this packet is going to be the name of the device, and that will be a human name. So it'll be Camera A Studio 1, Camera 2. It might be your video wall processor. You call the device as something that the user is going to recognize at the other end. Within that packet is contained details like the IP addresses, the port ranges, can it be controlled or not. So everything there is actually handled automatically within the NDI protocol for you. We can, of course, do static models of addressing this. There are things like discovery servers, so if the customer doesn't want to use MDNS for discovery, we can do manual discovery and other services to build around this too. On the receiving device, all of the receivers will actually then generate a list of the names that can be heard out the network. And that will be where the operator or the end user then operates the software. So that was that list that you saw in Studio Monitor briefly just now. The user or operator then chooses that device by name, and then and only then do we actually start moving data across the network to carry video, audio, and metadata as well. Within that, there are two streams, a high bandwidth stream and a preview stream, which are locked together to generate multi-viewers, so we're highly efficient on the network, but then a switchable high bandwidth stream when you're using a NewTek production system that we can also then generate the high quality output at the other end as well. Other devices and other receivers will actually only use the full program bandwidth stream, but that's just one of the little tricks that we have within our product line for the production system side. When it comes to NDI HX is more efficient. As I said, it's lower bandwidth. So with full NDI, we're looking at 150 megabit for a 1080p 50 stream, 375 for a 4K stream, which gets you quite a lot of streams down a single gigabit network in one direction. So it's 7 when we're looking at HD, between 2 and 3 at 4K. But with NDI HX, it's a 10:1 compression again. Same resolution, same frame rates, but only 15 megabit per second for HD or 30 megabit per second for 4K. Does exactly the same job, works the same way with the discovery, but as with all PTZ cameras, whether NDI HX or full NDI, we can pass that control protocol back across that same connection from your receiving device as well. As you scale up, we repeat these patterns. We generate more streams from more devices, and again, when they're not being pulled into a system, there's only that broadcast packet going out from that device. And in fact, multiple devices can send multiple streams at the same time. So a camera can quite happily go to 3 receiving endpoints. Or you could end up with an SDI cable going into one device if it's software-based, and you could go to 7 different targets. And this is all done using standard unicast networking, or one stream per connection. So if you need to go up to a scale where maybe you exceed the network bandwidth on a device, or actually on the actual available network bandwidth on the switch, we can of course also enable multicast for those larger scale projects when needed. So let's just do a quick summary of those key benefits of NDI along with a couple of others. So the main bit for your customers is it's user-friendly name-based operation, so they don't need to learn networking or IP addresses to actually use the system. We have that automated discovery to actually complement that fully. Data flows only when it's needed. It's not a constant perpetual thing like say the older days of when we worked with HD base T as well. It's very, very high performance, so we do full bandwidth, full frame rate, all at a very, very low compression ratio, but we keep the full quality of completely visually lossless. It's high performance, so we can work on mobile devices and software and hardware. There are low bandwidth modes available, including working over Wi-Fi, like Mark was showing with the iPhone just now. And all of this is actually generationally lossless even when you distribute it. With full NDI, we can encode and decode up to 1,000 times before there is any visual degradation in image quality. So one last couple of things I just want to point out with NDI there is that it's completely resolution, frame rate, and color space independent. We can support SD, HD, 4K, even 8K on the same network if we wanted to do so. We can have different frame rates on devices running together. We can have even different color spaces operating together. And it's been designed to be as elastic as possible to completely cater for what the future may hold, as well as the challenges that we're facing today, especially as we start moving towards 4K. When working with an NDI within the AV context, there are pretty much 4 different room types that we could look at as examples. So meeting rooms, your auditorium, multi-purpose rooms, but also even things like TV studios can all be meshed together on the same fabric, on the same network, and actually have full interoperability between them. You want to have some execs in a TV studio and show that in the auditorium, no problem. You want to relay what's in the auditorium and put that into breakout rooms and other spaces. Again, that's absolutely no issue because it can all talk the same language and operate on the same fabric there as well. Here is the total ecosystem. We have quite an expansive range of products on there, but also, and a whole number of third-party different vendors that we also work with as well across the board to almost cater for any sort of aspect or any type of deployment across these different productions that you might want to utilize. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I lost my flair. That's really, sorry, I thought you could say so much. If we just move on now, let's have a quick look at the NewTek Tricaster series. There are actually currently 4 current gen models that were sold throughout the year so far, starting from an ultra portable system, which has got 8 NDI inputs, up to our largest system, which is called the VMC, with 44 live NDI inputs on the system there. But I think it's a good opportunity to really talk about how we start bringing this together, because it's great having all of these sources and devices out there to utilize whenever you want. But actually, we actually want to start doing stuff with it. We want to actually create that content, create that branded video, actually start distributing that and getting that out there to actually start making that more useful. And so it's my pleasure to actually now talk about our latest addition to the Tricaster family, which is the Tricaster 2 Elite. And in my opinion, it's probably one of the ultimate AV media hubs that's currently on the market today.
And we're really excited about this. In fact, we're the first people to be running this in the UK. In fact, this whole event will be running on the Tricaster 2 Elite. So we can cut and show you a little bit about what we're doing here behind the scenes. There's Sally in the back there with the mask on. Hello, Sally. So we're running the whole show through this, which will include the Zoom interviews that we're doing later, all of the multiple cameras, the audio and the graphics, all being pulled together in this amazing hub. So we've been working with Tricasters for a while, but the 2 Elite is only been out a month, I think.
About that, yeah.
About that. And it's an amazing step forward with so much new stuff in it that is very, very timely. It fits this whole remote workflow, 100%.
Fantastic, thanks Mark. So let's have a look at what the Tricaster 2 Elite is, in fact, any of our Tricasters. So effectively, we can take all of these equipment racks that you'd be familiar with within the AV space. So things like your AV routing, your audio processor, your media players, recording for capture and playback as well. And all of that can be combined with all of the power of a broadcast vision mixer as well, all within a single unit. In the case of the Tricaster 2 Elite, this is a 3RU rack mount device, short rack depth, so it will fit in all the spaces with existing equipment that you may already have. But as we say, rapidly condense that down. In terms of actual protocols that you're going to want to work with in AV, we tend to typically see customers deploying NDI for video and presentation content and some audio over the Ethernet side, but quite typically that will also be paired with IP technologies such as Dante, for those in-room audio systems as well. So Dante mics, ceiling speaker arrays, speaker systems, all actually working together. And we can bridge those 2 environments together onto the Tricaster 2 Elite as well. If we just look around the back of the device at the actual hardware layout that we have here, it's actually our first system that offers both 8 SDI in and 8 SDI out running at full pelt into here on the system. On the output rays, you can actually have 2 4K outputs at 4K P60, and you can use that to then bridge into any existing 3G SDI that you've got on the input side. We give you 4 multi-viewers, 2 of which can run at HD and 2 at 4K, and we'll come back to that and a little bit later about how that would work. And then also you've got your analog audio inputs there as well, so you can utilize existing audio mixers or audio infrastructure if your customer has it or would prefer to use analog audio for certain applications. All of these can be used at the same time with Dante, with AES67, and even things like Ravenna Livewire for visual radio applications on the IP audio side as well, and you can mix and match between all these different types. If we just have a look at the input side though, we actually expand that even further by utilizing software in the network. Tricaster 2 Elite offers 32 live input sources up to 4K P60 in resolution, but as we've said before, it's kind of independent of resolution and frame rate, so you can use standard definition and high definition sources mixed with 4K sources all in the same production or AV environment without any issue. Across the whole input range the system supports, aside from SDI, is of course NDI. We have 8 RTMP, RTSP and RTP support, so you can bring in web streams from other events. Maybe you've got a customer with 2 office sites. They want to bring the stream from one site across public internet into another site and then remix that for their local audience as well. But we also support inbuilt video conferencing tools such as Skype, Teams, Zoom, Discord, and then Tencent for customers in the Asia Pacific region as well. One other new addition we've had on the input side though is we've recently also now embraced SRT, or Secure Reliable Transport. And Mark, you've had quite a lot of work already, you've done projects that you've done with SRT today. Do you want to sort of explain a little bit more?
Yeah, we have. I mean, SRT is a really interesting protocol, Secure Reliable Transport. It's designed to work over the public internet. So one of the key points with it is it enables you to use high quality video over a standard public internet, even when there's delay and lag, and issues on that line. Jitter particularly plays a really big effect on a lot of information going over the internet for RTMP or RTSP type transmission. So if you're going between perhaps offices, or you want to go between, we've been doing a lot recently because of the pandemic, we've been doing with reporters and remote presenters getting in from their homes into a studio. We've been using SRT, which gives you some amazing quality pictures at around the sort of 15 megabit mark. So we're able to use an encoder, receive that directly in a Tricaster Tool Elite and get you the absolute best quality you can get over a standard public internet. And for a lot of things, it would replace the need for a leased line. So it's excellent quality, and the protocol is free.
Yeah, we're also starting to see PTZ cameras and even mini converters now that don't just do one protocol. They'll embrace NDI and SRT. So really you could have a PTZ camera and say an exec has to work from home, but you want to get the best video quality. You could switch that camera into SRT mode and actually utilize that at their office, but then when things return more to normal, use it as NDI. There's tons of different ways that we can work together, but to actually have this range of sources available on one single production system and media hub is almost unprecedented at this time. Across all of those sources, as I said, we've got those 32 inputs, and you can completely mix and match every single one of these as much as you like. One thing I haven't mentioned there is just on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see something called Skype TX. Skype TX is a technology that's been around for a short while now, but it actually won some Emmy Awards from Microsoft, because typically when you actually see journalists out in the field on broadcast, in the news, they're dialing in with their headphones on there and using a phone to actually join in with a news report, they'll typically be using Skype TX and Skype running on a mobile device. So just as we showed you that working with NDI earlier, you can use those clients on a mobile device and then bring people in. Skype TX is a one-to-one peer connection, so you get the highest quality video and audio plus integrated talkback, and you actually have 2 channels of this baked into every Tricaster Tool Elite, and in fact across our Tricaster range. Recently, Microsoft opened up Skype TX now because that also now supports Microsoft Teams as well, particularly as now that Skype for Business has been retired, a lot of businesses are pivoting towards Teams utilization. On the end of that side, with the desktop client, both Skype and Teams support NDI, so you can generate NDI feeds and utilize them with NDI in their own right as well. So it's a fantastic technology, but a lot of people have asked us, can we expand beyond what Skype TX handles? People want to use other video conferencing clients. And that's where something called Live Call Connect comes in. This is a unique feature on the Tricaster Tool Elite. Live Call Connect also supports Skype and Teams, just in a slightly different way, but it also expands our video conferencing integration to cater for Zoom, Discord, and Tencent as well. And let's have a quick look at actually what Live Call Connect is and how that works. Live Call Connect is very much about breaking down that grid fatigue, or that it's the notion of being zoomed out, where audiences and business owners and staff members are seeing the same grid of faces day in, day out when remote working. There's no variety to what people are saying. Yes, there have been experiments with virtual backgrounds and the like there as well. But if you're trying to produce engaging content, you want to actually maintain the attention of your audience, but still combine the use of virtual and remote technologies, maybe we could do something that's a lot more interesting. So what Live Call Connect does is it will support anywhere between 1 and 9 callers on each of those applications. We then actually have inbuilt image analysis, which will then pull out from the back of the application each of those individual video calls. It'll analyze them and split them out into 9 individual separate sources that you can then bring into any of those 32 inputs on the Tricaster Tool Elite. Amongst those sources, you can also then capture a full application view, which allows you to actually grab the whole grid. So perhaps you've got a production where there's more than 9 people, but you still want to bring them all in. you can do so. We also enable a inbuilt browser mode, so you can bring in web content in a similar manner as well. You'll see in this little video, the actual image here, that obviously there's name straps and graphics UI appearing on here. But we actually have a live button, so that once you are actually live and you're in production, you can lock the application off and stop any mouse over layers actually appearing in your content. But once we've separated out those 9 individual feeds, we can then plumb them in. They're then just switchable, usable inputs within your live production, just as you would any of the other sources that we support across the back there. Within Live Call Connect, it doesn't just stop there. We support mix minus, so basically nobody can hear themselves. They get a return feed of the actual live production that's coming back to them, just like we do in Skype TX. And also an integrated talkback, so you can actually talk to your remote guests across each of those applications. It is a global talkback, so we can't actually demux the audio, sadly, at this time. And just to be clear, the actual audio feed that's coming back, while we can separate out video, the audio feed is also muxed, because just the computing power's just not there yet to separate audio. Once you've got these inputs coming in, then we can actually start breaking the monotony of that grid even further by actually utilizing the switching capability and overlaying graphics. So you can have overlays or load these different sources into downstream keys to create picture-in-picture effects and the like. But we do have that fully functional vision mixer with 60 total cross points across the system, including inbuilt media players and graphics and the like. This is augmented with something called mix effects. We give you 8 of these buses. Each mix effect can be used as another switcher, so you could do secondary or third productions as well. But also you can utilize these to start stacking sources up. We can layer them. We can also add other effects and keys on the top. So what does that really mean? Well, we could actually have 4 guests in a branded window. We could have them laid out so it looks like a virtual round table, like this short example on the left here. We also have inbuilt virtual sets, so if somebody was on a video conferencing call against a green screen, and we've done some demos where we're utilizing Skype to do that, we can bring people into a virtual set and the rest of the content as well. From a delivery standpoint on the Tricaster Tool, we give you 8 fully rendered outputs on the system. Those can be recorded. You can route those out both SDI and NDI. And in 4K, we offer 2 of them, but we give you no other limitation when working with 4K across the system. Everything is available. So it's 8 as HD, 2 as 4K, or 1 4K and 4 HD outputs if you want. And then we also offer an additional thing, which is a particular interest for the AV industry, which is the output matrix, which is your dedicated inbuilt router that you can utilize as well. So you can target 8 different endpoints. Those could be on-set displays like we're using here, monitors behind us that are running NDI decoders, SDI, or even actual inbuilt recording systems as well to enable post-production. And this routing matrix allows you to actually do a handshake between a device that's out there and then distribute that elsewhere. So some examples of how we could use this are things like courtrooms. We've worked with the UK Supreme Court, for example, but you could build on the work that we've done there for their live streaming and use this routing matrix to distribute content around the courtroom, video playback of evidence, for example. We can drive meeting rooms and drive content around those spaces and share content where people need it. We work with things like esports arenas, where we're working with companies like Gfinity. And in fact, on that image there, all of the screens had run with that video distribution. And the same thing expands to houses of worship, where there's more content and more screens around the venue. And we use this to actually drive the content that's in front of the audience and those that are present on site. And we can also then augment that with the live production for people that are no longer on site. And finally, this can extend to concert venues, auditoriums or meeting and teaching spaces, and also football stadiums, all of which we're working with, again, around pushing content around those venues, which is going to be increasingly important as things go on. You know, we're not going to go back to be able to work in the way that we did. We're not going to have the same audiences as we had before. People are more spread out, so we can make sure everybody gets the best view possible. I'm going to leave with one final example, which is something we've been looking at, which is an education lab. You know, we could have a look at how remote tutors and remote students can work together. We could bridge those together using Teams via Skype TX and Zoom via Live Call Connect, because perhaps that's what the students are using. An on-site tutor could be using a PTZ camera and their laptop using an encoder, so they could share the content with those remote tutors or students. And on-site students and the classrooms can be driven from the output matrix, so that even in overflow spaces, or if classes have to be split up into different spaces, everyone can still work together and collaborate. Some last additional features on the Elite that may be of interest to you guys are going to be chroma key and chroma key and color correction on every single input with inbuilt virtual sets as well, so you can again bring these different virtual environments together. We have an NDI KVM, so we can operate a system from anywhere on the network, from any computer, so from a support or live production standpoint. We give you live graphics, so you can use Photoshop and After Effects to create rich, dynamic, branded content as well as part of your productions or streams. And then finally, we have Live Panel, which allows you to create a custom web browser-based control of the Tricaster and the routing matrix, for example. So customers could, and end users can bring their own devices into a space or a room to operate that through a tablet or PC that they may already have. So back to where we start, which is, we see on our marketing about the Elite being better than broadcast. Why is that? Well, it's not just about bringing in remote guests, remote sources and local sources, your audio and web feeds. It's not just about streaming and remote delivery anymore. We have all of these powerful features within the system, but it's not just about traditional broadcast and TV studios anymore. It's for teaching, it can be used for conferences, online events, esports, houses of worship, government use, courtrooms and the like. In fact, really, the system's been built for tackling almost any event. And in fact, longer term, any eventuality in this new normal that we're in. It's remote, it's hybrid, it's anywhere in between. And we feel that we've built a product that can completely adapt to video production and content creation and AV distribution, no matter what the future may hold now or in the near future as well. So here's the full ecosystem that we had. We'll make sure everybody gets a copy of this just as a reference chart so you can get an idea of some of the devices that we already produced to help you build these different types of systems working with NDI. But one thing I haven't mentioned yet is really the streaming side of it. So we have these 8 rendered outputs on the system, but one other features of the Tricaster Tool Elite, and it's common to all of our Tricasters, is the inbuilt streaming encoders. Those can do any resolution or frame rate up to what you're broadcasting. We support all of the major APIs, so Facebook, YouTube, we can stream out to Microsoft Azure, even custom CDNs or systems that your customers may already have. But also now we're starting to increasingly work very closely with Vimeo on their platform side as well, and I think that's a really good opportunity for me to say thank you for watching, and I'm just going to hand you back to Mark and our next guest.
Brilliant, thank you, Liam. Actually, we've got a couple of questions here from the audience,
Sure.
so let's go straight to those there. We've got, what is the end-to-end latency?
So between the 2 versions of NDI, it's slightly different, but typically you're looking at 3 frames from hitting an encoder, say from an SDI input to an encoder, 1 frame into the network, 1 frame across the network, and then around another frame for decoding at the end. So everything's handled within that. If you're looking at PTZ cameras that use the NDI HX variant, the initial versions of that were using around 5 frames, but we're lowering that latency all the time. Just because of the lower data rate that we use, we're using existing long GOP encoders, so there's a little bit more latency in there. But yeah, typically 3 frames for NDI, 5 frames for HX. That's going to change a little bit over really big distances. There's additional latency, which is where things like, as you say, like SRT do come into their own as well.
Perfect, thank you for that. Another question on Live Connect. Would you be able to manually crop Live Connect streams to create your own presets?
Yeah, you can. So we actually have full region of interest control on every single input on the Tricaster Tool Elite. On our other existing systems, there's an optional add-on called Premium Access to enable that feature. But yeah, you could bring in a full screen shot multiple times. You could crop it, separate that out into different ways. You do have crop control and zoom and repositioning control on all of those inputs as well at the same time.
Perfect. It's incredibly powerful, and well, hopefully we're going to be using it here now. So
Yep.
Thank you, Liam.
No problem.